Hi, it's Marie. I haven't done a video in a while, so I thought maybe I'd take the time to do that. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to start out with Jim because he always has his images up 6 or 7 minutes after they're posted. So he's always the first in line. Again, this is my laugh of the week. I appreciate the way you bring humor to most of your composites, Jim. It's just lighthearted and easy, and it's got a nice composite or composition, photographically speaking. Triangles are very strong in composition, and you have a strong triangle. You have the bear up in the corner, and the duck here, his head points to the bear, and his tail points to the little soldier abandoning ship. And so you've got a nice triangular composition for eyes to roam around the picture. The lightest thing in the picture is always the most important, and you have told us that the duck is the most important by putting the white hat on his head. It would have been a little better had his head been lighter and these highlights on his tail and back a little darker. Speaking of light, the two little ducks on the big duck has the same lighting as the duck, up someplace up from the top right. This little guy, though, he's facing the wrong way for the light. His light is coming from the top left. There are ways you can get around that. A gradient overlay will sometimes fix that without any problems. Other times you have to put on lightening and darkening layers. And if you're interested, there are some videos in the tutorial section. There are a couple of things that I would change, and you know me, everything's always too dark, especially in the morning when the sun's coming in my office window. I would make the bear a little bit lighter. Now, I don't necessarily have to darken everything, so I could go in here into the built-in layer mask, and I could selectively darken around. And I'm doing this really rough. And I kind of like the head of the duck lighter, so I'm deliberately moving around the head to try and keep it lighter. And we'll just cheat here a little bit. Okay, let's try the mask on and off. See, we get the bear pretty much the same, and we've got the little, we've got the light on the duck's head a little bit, which is helpful. And it looks like we missed a big chunk over here. And if you want to see what you've missed and what you've got, you hit the Alter the Option key and click on the layer mask itself. And then you can go fix anything you've missed. You Alter Option to get it back. When I'm changing my brush size, you can use the right and left bracket keys. I like another shortcut. And when my brush is active, I can hold a Control and the Alter the Option key down. And I can make my brush bigger by moving it to the right, smaller by moving it to the left. I can add less feather by moving it down and more feather by moving it right. Now, I'm guessing many of you have PCs. You have to hold down the right mouse button when you're doing this for this shortcut to work. But it really is nice. And I encourage you to try it. I work with one hand on the mouse and one hand on the keyboard. And it really makes my life easier not having to go over and tap it half a dozen times or shift tap it to go 10 points at a time. But it's just helpful for me. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. The other thing I would do on this one, Jim, is since there's some light areas over here, I would consider a vignette to draw our eyes towards the center. And I threw a little one in Camera Raw. And it's just a way to fool our eyes, to tell our eyes what's important in the picture and where to go. So, just my take on it. Again, a lovely, light-hearted look at life on the duck pond. And then I get to Helen's. Helen, you're doing a really good job with those cloud and water brushes. They really help a lot to the realisticness. That sounds bad. The reality of the storm. Lovely vignette to draw our eyes in to where we want to look at. I like the way the sails seem to glow. Because there is so little light in the image, so little directional light, I should say, I would think that you want to tone down the whites in the duck. And I realized that was really difficult to do because the duck was taken in bright sunlight, and it's hard to tone it down well without it. Now, what you might think about doing, and I don't know if this will work, I didn't try it before, is go over to channels, and I'm just going to Command or Control click on the icon for the RGB. And that gets me just the light areas. I've selected everything in there that's light. And you can pretty much see that. And then I'll add a layer above this one. And I'll zoom way in. And I'm going to get a brush by tapping the B key. Come on. Tap the B key, get the brush. It's fighting me today. And I'm going to make that brush a little less. I'm going to make it a sharper edge. I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to come in here with, well, I've got a gray. What does that do? And I'm just going to go in these areas right here. And let's see what happens when we change the blend mode. If we change it to multiply, not so good. Color burn, not so good. Sometimes soft light, not so good. Okay, we can undo that gray. And let's just tap X and go to the black. Let's, come on. I don't know what the heck is going on. Sometimes I can get so disgusted. Well, X, my keyboard shortcut's not working, so I'm just going to flip that over and grab my brush again. And this time I'm going to do these light areas in black, and I'll check my blend modes, multiply, and then lower the opacity. Not too keen on that. Try a soft light. Let's see, maybe color burn. Maybe maybe linear burn, maybe just darken will do it. No. So anyways, I guess multiply gave me the best results. Really light on the multiply. And once I have the multiply done, I can come over here and pick all these other areas that might be too light and make them a little duller. Let's see, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting carried away. Okay, there's a little spot right here that needs some serious attention. All right, let's go back out to full size, Commander Control 0, Commander Control D to get rid of the selection. And we can play with the opacity on this. Maybe I should have used a brown rather than a black. And that might do something to it. I don't know. I did try a levels adjustment here. I liked it on the head of the duck, but the rest of it really didn't need it. The one thing I would caution, however, well, maybe there's two. We get a little bit of a repeating pattern here as we look at the water strokes in the background. If you go to your brush settings, you can put on a scattering. And if we look at the scattering, we can basically, what it does is it scrooches it around a little bit. We can also, sometimes with a shape dynamic, change the angle a little bit as we go along. I don't know if you've ever played with these, but that way you can kind of, well, let me show you here. Let me space this out. And I'm going to squash these a little bit to make them mimic kind of the brush that you were using. And I'll just add a quick little layer there and maybe make that a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. And you can see that we've changed the angle a little bit on each of them. We've changed the size. And a matter of fact, if we go back in here and go to shape dynamics, we can change the size jitter quite a lot too. We can make our brush bigger. And you can see the randomness that you can get. Now maybe this much randomness would be too much for your waves in the background, but I think it would help. And we wouldn't get such a regular repeating pattern. Now mind you, it's very faint, and I look for, you guys are getting so good, I have to look for little teeny tiny details. The other thing you might try is putting a few of those water splashes around the duck as well. And I almost want to say, let's tip the duck up a little bit so it looks like the cowboy pirate is kind of riding a bucking bronco. So that's my take on it. Doesn't mean you have to like it. I think it's a good job, and I love the luminance. As far as photographic composition, we've got a diagonal line here. That's always a nice way to put it. You've put the horizon line on the top line of the imaginary tic-tac-toe grid. You have put the duck on the intersection between the bottom and the left tic-tac-toe grid, which is a powerful point, and the boat resides along the other powerful point up there. So very well done compositionally speaking. Okay, looks like Richard's next. Wow. This is, excuse me, this is what I call an eye bender. Very, very symmetrical. It's a mirror image from nose to nose. And as I think Helen pointed out, we've got a little face down here in the background. And that's interesting. There are a lot of details. I really like the way this red goes. I might have done more with this part of the image. Maybe put it back on the bottom as well. Maybe eliminated the ducks. I don't know. There's some really interesting things going on. But one of the things that I thought might help it was to lower the hue and saturation just a little bit. We still get that really bright, brilliant cyan, but it isn't as jarring. It's more of a rich red rather than it's a richer red. And Richard, you should have a richer red. Pardon my puns. I also thought the ducks were dark, so I added an overall levels layer. And when I did that, you didn't need the lowering of the hue and saturation quite so much. It really is not a huge difference between it. One thing you might consider is, since you've kind of got a triangular composition going on, the two ducks and the face, maybe we could emphasize that face a little bit more. And I suggested maybe a crop on top. The other thing that I might suggest, and I didn't try this earlier, but let me see what happens. I want to add, and I just selected the face because that's what I want to show off. Come in here and add a curves layer. And now, it made the mask all by itself. I didn't have to do anything to it if I make this selection first. So I'm going to go over here in the curves adjustment layer, and I'm going to try and increase contrast. Maybe a really strong contrast. Not working the way I thought it might. So we'll go back to default, and I'm going to move my black point in. Oh, that's a bit too much. Move my white point in, just a smidge. And then I'm going to play with the middle and see if I pull it down, if we can see the face better, or if I pull it up. I think if we pull it down, we can see that face better. And now I need to go over to the layer mask itself, and I'm going to put a real big feather on it. And this is a really neat way to do it. The other thing that you can do while you're in here is you can change the density of the mask so it doesn't, doesn't show at all. And then we can selectively add a little bit of the mask. I don't think we need to, but I do know we need a big feather on that. Now, does that show the face more than the other one did? Just a little teeny bit. I'm not sure I like the way it's playing with the colors. So let's put that hue and saturation layer back on. The reason I'm asking is this is a blue red down here and this is a yellow red up here. Just interesting thoughts. And I gotta say, this was unexpected when I saw this, so that's a good thing. Make some emotion, keep people on their toes. And then then we have Sherry's. Now, photographically speaking, compositionally, it's very, very strong. Sherry has framed her subjects with this dark foliage around the edges. It also serves as a vignette to draw our attention back into the center. This to me has a very Mayan Aztec feel. I would expect to find this in the jungles of, where is it, Cozumel, where all the Aztecs lived. And the statue, to me, that's what brings it all to mind. There's got to be a temple around there someplace. And if we search long enough, we'll find it. Well, I played with it just a little bit. These dark spots over it's probably a jaguar rather than a lion, over his eye, look to me like a staple. Don't ask me where the pictures in my head come from, they just do. So I cloned out those two things, and I thought it looked a little better. It wasn't distracting my eye as much as the other one did. And this says highlight, but I really can't see what it's doing. Maybe I changed my mind after I put it on. Anyways, so I did that. And then I wondered what it would look like if it were a little bit lighter. And I tossed my way in back and forth. I guess I like the richer yellows in the statues. I don't know, that's a personal decision. You have got the jaguar almost, well, it's on a third line if you put the imaginary tic-tac-toe grid. His eye would just be about in the center of it, and the duck is running along the bottom tic-tac-toe line. So it's, compositionally, it's very, very strong. I did play with it a little bit. I wondered what it would look like. And I hate to, because, and please forgive me if I harp on this, Sherry, but your work is so good that I think just teeny weeny little details could make it so much better. Well, maybe not so much, but I think it could make it better and take you to a different level of compositing if you're interested in that sort of thing. And that's the direction of the light. Now, if we look at the lion, the shadows are on the right side of his face and in this area right here. So that means the light is coming from the left. And because the top is lighter than the bottom, it's coming from the top left. We see that continued here in this, the foliage, this leaf is clearly lit from the top left. The ground here appears to be lit from the top left, and it's probably, it's not an overhead light, it's a late afternoon, early morning light. And so all of the clues around here tell us that that's where the light's coming from. But if we look at the duck, which was shot in bright sunlight, and this is not bright sunlight, so we're dealing with that. Now, Sherry has managed to take all the highlight areas down, but we still can't see the duck's face. But if we look at the duck, the light seems to be coming from the right. So let's try something. I turned the duck the other way around. Now, I don't like the shadows on that. But I think if we look at it, I think the clues that we get from the other light look better on this duck than the other duck. Just my thoughts. Great job. Jim, I just remembered something on yours. I'm going to go back for a minute. We'll turn Sherry's off for a second. Jim, you've done an excellent job on these water reflections of his head, but I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of his body, because we can see the duck's foot here under the water. So maybe we'd want to see a little bit of the bear underwater, just a little bit, and then you could put a gradient mask on it to, you know, make it go up into his shoulders. Just a thought. And why I didn't think of it when I was looking at your picture, don't ask me. I'm scattered today. Then I looked at mine again. This is not my favorite composition. The way I wanted, I worked a long time on another one that was very similar, and it just didn't work the way I wanted it to work. So I started over and came up with this. And it looks okay, but there's no pop or jazz or anything to it. So this morning I thought, well, this is what you should have done, Marie. And I added a curves layer to increase the contrast. Boom! Right there. Just that little bit. Adding contrast. And that's always been my thing. From the time I started working with photography and film, I always added a contrast filter when I printed my stuff. And why I didn't see it this time, I don't know. But just that little teeny bit really makes it look a little better. It's still not my favorite. I like the rusty nail a little better, but this one went together. Too easy to really love it, I think. I think I like the ones that take forever to go through to make it look good. But anyways, I want to thank you all for entering our little challenge. I think you've done some nice work. And thanks, and I'll see you later.